Welcome to Fear Spiral, a place where real stories pull you deeper with every word, until you're not sure what's real anymore. Tonight, we're taking a long drive down America's darkest highways, where headlights fade, roads vanish, and something always seems to follow just out of sight. These are 5 true, terrifying stories from long night drives. Stories told by people who swore they'd never drive alone after what they saw. If you love true horror that feels too real to ignore, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because once you enter the fear spiral, there's no way back. The Man by Mile Marker 187. I'm not sure if what I saw that night was a person or something pretending to be one. It was late March, about 3 years ago. I was 25 at the time, working as a delivery driver for a furniture company out of Kansas City. The company had me delivering couches and recliners to small towns across Kansas and Missouri, sometimes overnight. I didn't mind. I liked driving at night. It was quiet, no traffic, no distractions. But this one night changed that forever. I was driving west on Highway 50, somewhere between Emporia and Newton, Kansas. It was around 2:30 in the morning, pitch black except for my headlights stretching down the 2-lane road. I remember looking at my GPS and seeing mile marker 187 coming up. I'd been driving for hours without seeing another car. The road was empty, silent, and it almost felt like the world around me didn't exist outside those beams of light. The air was cool, about 40 degrees, and my windows were cracked slightly to keep me awake. All I could hear was the low hum of the tires against the asphalt and the occasional bump of uneven pavement. I had a half-drunk cup of gas station coffee sitting in the cup holder, and an old rock station playing faintly on the radio. It was peaceful in that lonely way only long night drives can be. Then I saw him. At first I thought it was just an animal, a deer maybe, standing by the guardrail. But as I got closer, I realized it was a man. He was standing right by the edge of the road next to the mile 187 marker, facing the fields. He didn't move. He didn't even look up when my headlights hit him. He was wearing a dark jacket, maybe brown or black, and jeans. His hair looked short, and something about him seemed wrong, like he was too still, too straight. His arms hung unnaturally at his sides. As I passed him, I slowed a little, expecting him to turn or wave for help, but he didn't. He just stood there, motionless, staring into the dark fields. I remember glancing in my side mirror as I drove by, and I swear to God I saw his head turn slowly toward me. Not his shoulders, just his head. It twisted in this slow, unnatural way until I couldn't see his face anymore because of the angle of my headlights. A chill went through my entire body. I felt my hands tighten on the wheel. I tried to tell myself he was just some drunk guy walking home or waiting for someone, but at 2:30 a.m. on a highway in the middle of nowhere, it didn't add up. I drove another few miles, heart pounding, trying to shake it off, but the image of that man standing there wouldn't leave my head. I thought about calling the highway patrol, just in case someone was stranded, but my phone had no signal. Classic rural Kansas. A few minutes later, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Up ahead in the distance, my headlights caught movement again, something standing near the road. I slowed down. My first thought was that maybe it was another driver pulled over, but as I got closer, I realized it was him, the same man standing by another marker sign. Same jacket, same jeans, same eerie stillness. This time he was turned facing the road, looking directly at me as I approached. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I eased off the gas and stared, trying to make sense of it. There was no way he could have gotten there that fast. I'd been going 60 miles an hour for at least 5 minutes since I'd passed the first spot. He couldn't have walked, not across those open fields, not that quickly. As I passed, I tried to look at his face, but the moment my headlights hit him, I realized his eyes were wide open, too wide, and there was something off about his mouth. It looked like he was smiling, but the expression didn't reach his eyes, like a mask that didn't fit right. Then his head snapped toward my truck again, just like before, a fast, jerky motion that didn't look human. I floored it. My tires squealed a little as I sped down the empty highway, my heart thudding so hard it felt like my chest might burst. I didn't stop until I reached a small 24-hour gas station near Newton. The lot was empty except for a single semi parked near the edge. I parked under the lights, shaking. My phone finally got service, and I sat there debating whether to call the cops. What would I even say? "Hey, there's a creepy guy standing by mile markers." It sounded insane. I decided to just wait there for a bit, calm down, and get some coffee. I went inside, grabbed a cup, and chatted a little with the night clerk, an older guy named Ron. I told him I thought I'd seen someone walking on the highway a few miles back, and his expression changed. "You said by mile 187? He asked. "Yeah," I said. "You know the spot?" He nodded slowly. "We've had a few reports of someone out there over the years. Always around this time of night. State troopers never find anyone when they check." I kind of laughed nervously, trying to play it off, but inside I felt sick. "What do you mean over the years?" Ron shrugged. "Old story. Couple died in a wreck near that marker back in the 90s. Husband made it out of the car and tried flagging someone down, but no one stopped. By the time they found him, he'd wandered into the field and froze to death. I didn't say anything after that. I just nodded, thanked him for the coffee, and sat back in my truck for a while. Eventually, I decided to keep driving. But when I got back on the road, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. As my headlights swept across the side of the highway near the gas station exit, I saw a mile marker sign that read 187. I had driven at least 15 miles past it before stopping. There shouldn't have been another one. I don't know how to explain it, but I swear the marker was there. Same number, same bend in the road, same patch of grass by the rail. I looked in the rearview mirror, and for just a split second, illuminated in my taillights, I thought I saw a figure standing by the road again. Still, dark, facing me. I didn't look back after that. I finished that delivery and told my boss I'd never take that route again, and I haven't. Every time I drive at night now, I keep my eyes fixed straight ahead because somewhere on a dark Kansas highway, by a sign that shouldn't exist, someone is still waiting. The rest stop near exit 43. I used to drive long-haul routes across the Midwest, mostly between Oklahoma and Colorado. I'm not easily shaken. Years on the road get you used to a lot of weird stuff. But there's one night I'll never forget. It was December 2018, and I was on my way back from Denver with a near-empty trailer. Snow had started falling as I crossed into western Kansas, and I decided to stop for the night. The next town was still about an hour away, so I pulled into a small rest stop near exit 43 on Interstate 70, a place I'd never used before. It was around 3:10 in the morning, cold enough that my breath fogged the air the second I stepped out. The snow was light, just dusting the ground, and the wind was the kind that makes the air sound like it's whispering. The rest stop had maybe 4 parking spots for semis and a single building with bathrooms and vending machines. The lights buzzed weakly, that flickering fluorescent kind that hums just enough to make silence uncomfortable. I parked on the far end, next to an empty pickup truck. It looked abandoned. No snow disturbed around it, no lights inside. I figured someone had left it there overnight. Inside the rest stop, the air smelled faintly like bleach and old coffee. The heat wasn't working properly, and the only sound came from the soda machine humming in the corner. I used the restroom, washed my hands in freezing water, and splashed some on my face to stay alert. As I was drying off, I heard it, a soft tapping sound, like someone flicking a fingernail against glass. I stopped, looked around. Nothing. The tapping stopped too. I shrugged it off. But as I stepped into the hallway that led back to the main lobby, I heard something else, a faint shuffle of footsteps behind me. They weren't steady. They were slow, dragging like someone walking barefoot on tile. I turned around immediately. The hallway was empty. The lights above flickered once, then steadied again. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing down the corridor. No answer. I walked quickly back toward the main area, trying to convince myself I was just tired. Maybe the sound had been the heating system or water pipes. But when I got to the vending machines, I noticed something odd. One of the soda cans inside was shaking slightly, like it had just been nudged. That's when I realized how cold it had gotten. My breath was visible even inside the building now, and the hum of the lights seemed quieter, like the whole rest stop was holding its breath. I decided that was enough. I turned to leave, but as I reached the glass doors, I froze. Outside, standing just past the light's edge, was a figure. It looked like a man, tall, maybe 6 feet, wearing a dark parka with the hood up. He was just standing there, motionless, facing the building. I could barely make out his face, but I could see a faint glint where his eyes should have been. I thought maybe he was another traveler, maybe stranded, but there was something about the way he stood in me stiff, like every muscle was locked in place, and That made my stomach twist. I reached slowly for the door handle, intending to lock it when the man suddenly tilted his head, not like a curious person, but more like something studying me. I froze. Then he raised one arm slowly and pointed at me through the glass. I stumbled back a few steps. "Hey," I called out. "You okay out there?" No response. He didn't move. That's when the fluorescent light above the entrance flickered out, plunging the glass doors into darkness. My heart started pounding. When the light buzzed back to life, the man was gone. I turned and ran to my truck, barely breathing. The wind outside had picked up and the snow was coming down harder now. My boots crunched on the gravel as I sprinted across the lot. I jumped inside, locked the doors, and started the engine. As my headlights came on, I glanced in the side mirror and froze again. The pickup truck parked beside mine now had fogged up windows, like someone was breathing heavily inside. But when I looked directly through the windshield, it was completely empty. I sat there gripping the steering wheel, trying to make sense of it. My truck's heater was blasting, but I still couldn't stop shaking. I told myself to calm down. Maybe it was just condensation. Maybe I was seeing things. But then from the corner of my eye, I saw movement again. The man in the parka was standing behind my trailer, half hidden in the shadows of the lot lights. He wasn't moving, but I could see his breath fogging in the cold air. And I swear, even from that distance, I could hear this faint, rhythmic tapping, like fingernails against metal. I shifted into gear and floored it out of there. Snow sprang up behind me as I pulled back onto I-70. My hands were trembling so bad I could barely hold the wheel steady. I didn't look in the mirrors again until I was 20 miles down the road. When I finally did, I caught something that made my skin crawl. On the back door of my trailer, in the thin layer of frost, were 5 finger streaks, dragged downward, like someone had been touching it while I drove off. When I got to the next truck stop, I told a state trooper about what I'd seen. He just nodded slowly and said, "You stopped near exit 43? That place has been trouble for years. Couple of disappearances back in the 90s. We found one guy's truck still idling there. Driver was never found." I tried to brush it off as superstition, but the trooper's last words stuck with me. "Every report we get says the same thing. Tall man in a dark parka, pointing at the door. It's been 7 years since that night, and I still drive that stretch sometimes. I always make sure I have enough gas to get past exit 43 without stopping. But every time I pass it, I glance at the rest stop from the highway. And once, around 3 a.m., I could have sworn I saw someone standing under the flickering light. Still, watching, waiting. The woman behind the counter. This happened about 5 years ago, somewhere along Highway 191 in Utah. I was driving from Flagstaff, Arizona, up to Provo, and I had been on the road for nearly 10 hours straight. It was the middle of June, but the desert gets cold after midnight, and that night the wind was howling through the canyons hard enough to shake my side mirrors. Remember the exact time because I looked at the dash clock when I pulled off. 2:47 a.m. I was nearly out of gas and caffeine, and when I saw a flickering neon sign in the distance that said Mavericks Fuel and Deli, open 24 hours, it felt like a blessing. The place was small. Just one row of pumps and a squat convenience store with those humming fluorescent lights that make everything look a little too pale. A single car, an old silver sedan, was parked off to the side. Other than that, the lot was empty. I pulled up to the pump, filled the tank, and then went inside to grab some coffee and a snack. The bell over the door chimed softly as I stepped in. The first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. Usually gas stations have that faint country radio playing, or at least the hum of coolers, but here, it was dead silent except for a faint buzzing from the overhead lights. Behind the counter stood a woman, maybe mid-40s, wearing a red name tag that said Darlene. She was staring down at something behind the register and didn't look up when I entered. "Evenin'," I said quietly, trying not to sound too loud in the silence. She looked up slowly and smiled, but there was something strange about the smile. It looked like it was taking effort, like she was forcing her face to move that way. "Evenin'," she said, her voice flat. "Coffee's fresh." I nodded, grabbed a cup, and poured some. The coffee was lukewarm, almost cold, but I didn't complain. As I stirred in some creamer, I noticed something odd and a faint, wet sound like dripping water coming from behind one of the aisles. I figured maybe a fridge was leaking, so I walked a few steps toward the sound. But when I turned the corner, I froze. There was a trail of wet footprints leading from the store's back door up to the middle of the aisle. Bare footprints, small and light like a woman's. The last print ended right beside the shelf of chips, and then just stopped. There were no return prints, no smudges, just that faint, glistening trail that ended halfway down the aisle. My skin prickled. I turned to glance at the clerk. "Hey, you got a leak or something back here?" She didn't answer right away. Then, in that same monotone voice, she said, "Back door's supposed to be locked." She didn't look up from the counter this time, just stared straight ahead. Something about the way she said it made my stomach twist. I backed away slowly, trying not to sound nervous. "Well, maybe someone came in?" Still nothing. Then almost in a whisper she said, "You shouldn't be here right now." I froze. "What?" Her eyes flicked up to meet mine. They looked tired, but wide, alert, and filled with something I can only describe as fear. "Pump your gas and go," she said softly. "Please," I didn't ask questions. I grabbed a granola bar from the nearest rack, set it on the counter, and fumbled a few dollars from my wallet. Her hands were trembling as she rang it up. When she handed me the change, she said under her breath, "Don't look at the mirrors on your way out." That sentence made no sense until I walked back outside. The wind had died down, and the silence was worse than before. As I stepped toward my car, I noticed something. The glass door behind me reflected the inside of the store, and in that reflection, I saw someone standing behind the counter next to Darlene. It wasn't her reflection. This figure was taller, thinner, its head tilted at a strange angle. The lights above it flickered, and I could have sworn I saw water dripping off its hair onto the floor. I turned around fast, hoping there was no one there. Darlene was alone, looking straight down at the counter again, hands clasped tight. I didn't say a word. I got into my car, locked the doors, and started the engine. As I pulled out of the lot, I made the mistake of glancing in my rearview mirror, and that's when I saw it again. In the reflection, through the glass front of the store, someone was standing outside now, right behind the pumps. It looked like a woman with long, soaked hair clinging to her face, her body pale against the darkness. She wasn't moving, just standing there, watching my car leave. My headlights hit her as I pulled away, but when I looked again, she was gone. I drove for almost 40 minutes before I finally saw another sign of civilization, a truck-stop diner with a few semis parked out front. I pulled in, still shaking, and went inside to get real coffee. The clerk there, an older guy, noticed how pale I was and asked if I was okay. I told him about the weird gas station off 191, Mavericks Fuel and Deli. He frowned and said, "There hasn't been a Mavericks out there for years. That building's been boarded up since 2009, fire in the back room. Some lady that worked nights died in it." I told him he was wrong, that I had just been there an hour ago. He didn't argue, just looked at me the way people look when they don't believe you but don't want to say so. Later, when I checked my GPS history, I noticed something even stranger. There was no recorded stop near that area. My route showed me driving straight through without a break. To this day, I don't drive that stretch of Highway 191 after dark. Every time I pass through Utah, I make sure I'm well past that exit before midnight, because sometimes when I glance in my mirrors, I swear I still see the faint reflection of a woman behind the counter, watching me go by. The detour through Black Pine Pass. This happened back in October of 2021, in northern Idaho. I was driving home from visiting my sister in Spokane, heading toward Boise. It was late, around 1:45 a.m., and I was about halfway through the trip when I hit a detour sign. The GPS told me to take Black Pine Pass Road, a 2-lane mountain route that cut through forest and mining land. I didn't think much of it. I'd driven through worse. The sky was overcast, no moon, no stars, and the temperature had dropped to the low 40s. The road twisted sharply with tall pine trees pressing in on both sides. My high beams barely reached past a few car lengths before the darkness swallowed everything again. For a while, it was fine, just the hum of the tires and the occasional crunch of gravel when the pavement gave way to patches of dirt. But then I noticed something strange. Every few minutes I'd see reflective eyes in the trees, like animals watching. At first I assumed deer, but the spacing was wrong. Too high up for deer, too far apart for raccoons or coyotes. About 20 minutes into the pass, my radio lost signal. Just static. Then my phone, which had been charging on the dash, went dark. No service. That sinking feeling hit me hard, the realization that I was completely alone out there. The next thing I noticed was the smell. It came suddenly, faint at first, like something damp and metallic. I rolled up the window thinking maybe I'd passed a dead animal, but the smell got stronger. Like iron and rot, mixed with wet soil. That's when I saw something move. About 100 feet ahead, just past a bend, my headlights caught a figure walking along the right shoulder. It looked like a man, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing what looked like a brown work coat. His clothes were wet, glistening slightly in the light. I slowed down instinctively, thinking maybe he needed help. But something about the way he moved didn't look right. His steps were uneven, like one leg was dragging, and his head was tilted forward, chin nearly touching his chest, like he was looking at the ground as he walked. I rolled down the window just a little and called out, "Hey, you okay?" He stopped. For a second he didn't turn around, just stood there, shoulders rising and falling slowly. Then without lifting his head, he took one slow step toward the road. Something in me screamed to hit the gas. I did. I swerved slightly to the left to give him room, but as I passed, I caught a glimpse of his face. Or what should have been his face. There was nothing. Just blackness, like his skin ended abruptly below his eyes, and everything beneath was shadow. My heart was pounding as I sped past. I checked my mirror and saw him still standing there, head down, motionless. I told myself it was a trick of the light. Maybe dirt or a beard. Anything to make it make sense. But then about 10 minutes later, I saw headlights appear in my rearview mirror. At first, I was relieved. Another driver. But then I realized something was off. The lights were way too close, and whoever it was had their high beams on, blindingly bright. I tapped my brakes to signal them to back off. They didn't. Instead, they got closer. Close enough that I couldn't even see the front of their vehicle anymore. Just pure white light flooding my mirrors. Then the lights suddenly cut out completely. No fade. No turn, just gone. I slammed my brakes thinking maybe they'd crashed. I looked behind me, nothing but darkness. No lights, no engine, nothing. That's when the smell hit again, stronger now, almost choking. I gagged and rolled up the windows, shaking. My instincts were screaming to keep driving, but I couldn't stop glancing at the mirrors. Every time I did, I swore I could see shapes between the trees, like figures standing just beyond the line of the forest, watching. After what felt like forever, I saw a sign ahead. Black Pine Summit. 2 miles. It was the first sign I'd seen in nearly 40 minutes. I gripped the wheel tighter and focused on that small patch of text like it was salvation. As I rounded the next curve, I saw movement again, but this time in front of my car. A person standing in the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes, tires squealing. My headlights hit them fully and my stomach dropped. It was the same man from before. Same coat, same hanging head. Only now he was facing me directly. His skin was gray, almost wet-looking, and as I stared, I saw his jaw begin to move. Slowly, like something trying to remember how to speak. Then he raised one arm and pointed toward the forest. I couldn't breathe. The air inside the car felt heavy, the way it does right before a storm breaks. My chest tightened. Then out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement in the trees. Dozens of shapes stepping closer to the road, their pale faces catching the faint reflection of my headlights. That was it. I floored the accelerator, swerving around the man and tearing down the mountain road. My truck fishtailed once, gravel spraying out from under the tires, but I didn't slow down. I just kept going until the trees began to thin, and I finally saw the glow of highway lights in the distance. When I reached the next town, a place called McCall, I pulled into a diner, parked under the bright neon, and just sat there shaking. My hands were trembling so badly I dropped my phone twice, trying to text my sister that I'd made it out. Later that morning, when the sun came up, I asked a local about Black Pine Pass. He frowned and said, "You took that road at night? No one does anymore. Washout up there a few years back. A work crew got caught in it. 3 men never found. People say they still see lights up there." He said it so casually, like it was local folklore, but I can still smell that iron rot if I think about it too long. And sometimes when I drive mountain roads at night, I catch myself checking the mirrors too often, because I swear every now and then, I still see a faint pair of headlights in the distance, following too close. The car that wasn't there. This happened in the summer of 2019, somewhere along Highway 93 between Kingman, Arizona and Las Vegas, Nevada. If you've ever driven that route at night, you know what I mean when I say it feels endless. Miles and miles of nothing but black desert stretching in every direction. You can go half an hour without seeing another pair of headlights. I was driving back to Vegas after visiting family in Arizona. I left late, probably a mistake, and by the time I hit the open highway it was past 2 a.m. The air outside was dry and hot, even at night. My windows were down and the only sound was the steady hum of tires on asphalt. At first it was peaceful. Just me, the road, and the faint static of some AM radio station that came and went with the signal. But somewhere past the mile marker, 217, I noticed something strange in my mirror. A pair of headlights cresting a distant hill behind me. That wasn't unusual. Cars pass sometimes, even that late. But after a few minutes, the lights were still there. Same distance, same brightness, like whoever it was had matched my speed exactly. I tapped the brakes once to let them pass. Nothing. The car stayed back far enough that I couldn't make out its shape, just those two bright orbs hovering in the dark. Another 5 minutes passed. Still there. I told myself it was coincidence, maybe a nervous driver who didn't want to overtake in the dark. But as the minutes dragged on, my nerves started to tighten. The highway was straight and empty for miles. No turns, no exits, nowhere for them to go. Then, just as suddenly as they'd appeared, the lights went out. No turn-off, no gradual dimming. Just gone. I checked the mirrors over and over. Nothing but black behind me. A chill ran through me even though the air was still thick with desert heat. I reached over and turned the radio off completely. The silence was deafening. Just the low growl of the engine and the soft hiss of wind through the open window. About 10 minutes later, I saw something up ahead. A faint light. At first, I thought it might be another car pulled over, but as I got closer, I realized it was a single vehicle, an old, light blue sedan, parked on the side of the road with its hazard lights flashing. I slowed down, debating whether to stop. Normally I would. I've helped stranded drivers before. But something about this car didn't sit right. The driver's door was open. The headlights were off. And yet the engine was running. I could see faint heat distortion rising from the hood in my beams. I slowed to maybe 20 miles an hour and leaned a bit to look. There was no one inside, no movement, no shadows. The driver's seat was empty. Then I noticed something that made my heart stutter. The license plate was hanging half off, like it had been pulled loose by hand. My instinct screamed to keep driving, but I couldn't stop looking. I inched forward a few more feet, trying to see if maybe someone had gone to get help. That's when I caught movement in the mirror. The headlights behind me were back. Bright, white and close at maybe 30 yards away, and they were coming fast. I hit the gas and shot forward. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. The headlights behind me swelled, closing the distance until they were right on my bumper. I could see them flashing, 1, 2, 3, like whoever was behind me was trying to signal something. I gripped the wheel, muttering, come on, under my breath, trying to find an exit, a turn, anything. But there was nothing, just black desert stretching forever. Then in my mirror, I saw something that made my blood run cold. For a split second, the glare of their headlights illuminated the blue sedan I'd just passed, and it was now parked in the middle of the road, facing sideways, like it had been moved there. I swerved hard, tires screeching, and barely missed clipping it. The back end of my car fishtailed, but I managed to straighten out and keep going. When I looked back, the headlights that had been chasing me were gone again. I didn't slow down for another 20 miles. I kept checking the mirror, scanning the sides of the road, expecting those lights to reappear at any second, but they never did. When I finally reached a small truck stop near Hoover Dam, I pulled over and stumbled inside, shaking. There was a state trooper sitting at the counter sipping coffee, and I went straight up to him. I told him everything. The car, the headlights, the chase. He didn't interrupt, just stared at me with this unreadable expression. When I finished, he asked me to describe the sedan. Light blue, I said. Older model. Maybe late 80s or 90s, license plate hanging off. He nodded slowly. You said around mile marker 217? Yeah, I said. Why? He sighed, rubbed his chin and said quietly, You're not the first one to see it. Apparently there'd been a wreck on that stretch years ago. A family in a blue sedan. They'd broken down at night, tried flagging someone down, but got hit by a truck that didn't see them. Killed instantly. The sedan was totaled, but for some reason, they never removed the wreck from the area for weeks. Since then, people have reported seeing ghost lights, headlights that appear, follow, and vanish. Others have claimed to see that same blue car, always empty, engine running. The trooper said it so matter-of-factly it barely felt real, but what he said next chilled me to the bone. You said their hazards were on, right? I nodded. He leaned forward a little. That car hasn't had a working battery in 20 years. I drove home with the cabin lights on the rest of the way. To this day, I refuse to take Highway 93 after dark. And sometimes when I'm driving at night and catch headlights in my mirror that stay just a little too steady for a little too long, I can't help but wonder if they're even real. Because on those empty roads, there's no one to prove they are.